I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports, and today I'm going to review the TFC Draft, the Fantasy Championship Draft, that took place yesterday afternoon on our site at 3 p.m. This was a great draft with several top owners and actually some past champions as well in this draft, and I was able to interview two of the owners after the draft to get their thoughts on this draft and the coming season. I was able to talk to Ben Shiarelli and RJ. RJ has been in several of these video reviews that I've done, and I've actually said his team has been a top one several times as well. So really interesting to hear from both of these guys. I want to thank them a lot for taking the time to let me interview them to get their thoughts on this draft. So you'll want to stick around to after this review and see what these guys have to say. Again, if you want to get in the fantasy championship, go to fantasychampionship.com for a chance to win $300,000. It's a premier high-stakes championship on the web. You'll want to get into it sooner than later before it sells out. Again, go to fantasychampionship.com for a chance to win $300,000. Also, go to rtsports.com, click on the football link, then click on Money Leagues. You can see all the different leagues we have to offer as well. We have all different price points, all different formats. You can do head-to-head total points. You can do different price points to as cheap as $10, or you can sign up for leagues in the thousands of dollars. So we have all different leagues to offer everyone, and we have drafts going off every night, every day as well, especially at this time of year. So if you want to get in a league, go to rtsports.com right now and sign up for one today. Also, I was told that Mallins was in this draft. He did not reveal himself to everyone, but you can look at the draft board, maybe figure out what team his is. And everybody loves Mallins. He's always in the chat lobby of our football page. You can hear him in there talking a lot, and I'm sure he thinks his team did really well in this one. Maybe you can leave a comment, say what you think he did, how he did in this draft as well. And Mallins, thanks a lot for partaking in this draft. And I'm going to share it now so everybody can see the draft board, and you can see all the teams up here. And like I said, RJ and Ben Shiarelli, they joined me after this review, and you can listen to what they have to say about their teams. They actually picked back-to-back. RJ picked 5th, and Ben Shiarelli picked 6th. The first thing I did want to mention, Alvin Kamara, he ended up going 5th overall, so he didn't fall really any farther than he has been with news of his possible holdout, which looks like it could be ending, and also his injury with his epidural in his back, which is a little bit concerning, but RJ still felt good about taking him 5th overall. So Alvin Kamara went 5th overall in this draft. Leonard Fournette, this draft took place before he signed with the Bucs. He ended up going in the 8th round to Corey Johnson, so Corey could end up getting some good value for Fournette here, who could be the starter in Tampa before long. So Ryquell Armstead, another guy I'm interested to see where he lands, because he is now likely the starter in Jacksonville. He goes in round 7 to Josh Hyatt. That's where Ryquell Armstead fell in this draft. Also, George Kittle, he fell to the 3rd round. Normally he goes in the 2nd round. These top 2 tight ends both go in the 2nd round, Travis Kelce, George Kittle. But Kittle fell to the 3rd round to AC. He got him with the 2nd pick in the 3rd round. So AC might have got some pretty good value with Kittle there in the 3rd round. Also, I wanted to mention that kicker. This might have been the soonest I've seen a kicker taken. AC, again, he got good value with Kittle here, and he ends up taking Harrison Butker, in the round 12, the first kicker off the board. Might be the soonest I've seen a kicker taken. Then he followed that up with the top defense that many think is this year in fantasy, Pittsburgh Steelers. So he took kicker and defense back-to-back picks. Interesting to see how that strategy is going to play out for AC's team. All right, let's talk about the 3 teams I like a lot in this draft. First one, Mike Lott. I thought he really did a good job. He drafted in the 11th spot. He took Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, DJ Moore, A.J. Brown, Raheem Mostert, J.K. Dobbins, Tyler Higbee, Latavius Murray, Darius Slayton, Matt Ryan, Justin Jefferson, Darrington Evans, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Gesicki. That's the core of his team, and he has Kirk Cousins as his backup quarterback. Again, I like his 2 running backs, Jacobs and Drake. I think both these guys are top 10 potential at the position. I think he did well at receiver, too, even though he waited. He got DJ Moore, A.J. Brown. Both of them, I think, could be low-end number 1s. So I like his depth there. Again, Depth at running back is really solid as well with Mostert, Dobbins, Murray. Murray could be even more intriguing if Kamara ends up being hurt more than he's leading on. And then he has Higbee and Gesicki to platoon at tight end. I like Higbee. Could be a low-end number one at the tight end spot. And then Matt Ryan, dependable starter at quarterback. So I think Mike Lott really did a good job in this draft. Another owner I like, Dennis Botch. He had the 4th pick, took Michael Thomas with his first pick. He passed on Kamara, took the sure thing in Thomas. Then he followed that with Nick Chubb, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Akers, Tyler Lockett, Antonio Gibson, Evan Ingram, A.J. Green, Damian Harris, T.J. Hawkinson, Anthony Miller, A.J. Dillon, Brian Edwards, Justin Jackson, Cam Newton, the core of his team. Again, some of these teams taking quarterback early have been on my top lists in recent drafts, but it's played out really well for these owners. I normally don't do that, but I think Dennis did well here in getting Mahomes in the 3rd round. I like his running backs with Chubb and Akers as a starter. Worry about his depth a little bit with Antonio Gibson, Damian Harris, and A.J. Dillon. They have some question marks, but I like the starters. I like his receivers a lot with Thomas, Lockett, and Green. And again, tight end looks good to me with Evan Ingram. I think he's a legit possible guy for a breakout season if he plays the whole year. If he can stay on the field, I think he could be top 5. And he has the top quarterback in most people's eyes in Patrick Mahomes. So really good team by Dennis here. And the last one I want to talk about is Stephen Rangahan. I apologize, Stephen, if I pronounce your name wrong. He drafted first. This has been a theme as well. A lot of the top owners for me have been drafting out of this first spot. He took Christian McCaffrey, followed that with Lamar Jackson. Then he took Chris Carson, DK Metcalf, Marquise Brown, Darren Waller, Zach Moss, Jamison Crowder, Henry Ruggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Preston Williams, Noah Fant, Carlos Hyde, and Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, and then Joe Burrow's his backup QB to Lamar Jackson. Again, I like this team. I think he did well with his 2 running backs, McCaffrey and Carson. He might not have that legit number 1 receiver, the sure thing, but I think Metcalf's definitely possible to do that this year, have that breakout year. I like Marquise Brown too. And then he followed that with 4 receivers to provide some depth for a position that might be kind of thin for him, getting Crowder, Ruggs, Sanders, and Williams. So I think Steven did well out of that first spot. Again, it's been kind of a common theme. And now I want to get to these interviews with Ben Shiarelli and RJ. These guys did a great job stopping by and talking to me. I really appreciate them. So now here is my interview with Ben Shiarelli. I'm joined now by Ben Shiarelli. He had the 6th pick in this TFC draft that just took place on our site. Ben, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me.
So, Ben, you had the 6th pick, and you got Dalvin Cook. So I just want to ask about that first-round pick. What were you thinking you might be able to land with Kamara's situation? Edwards-Hilaire's kind of been a guy moving up drafts as well. What were your thoughts on that first-round pick heading into it?
Yeah, ever since I stupidly didn't take Barkley in the first round his rookie year, I've stayed away from rookies to keep those terrible decisions going. You know what I mean? The 6-7 hole just got really gross really quick. And, I was hoping that Thomas would fall to me because you want that first round pick to be, at the very least safe, right? And he's probably the safest guy on the board, you could argue. But since he went 4 to Dennis, figured got to take a shot and went with Cook. I think he'll get that all worked out. Was a little more nervous about Kamara, not only given the news with the team, but the news from a health perspective as well. I think you're going to start seeing him fall a little bit further.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely worrisome hearing that he got an epidural. So after that pick, you ended up going 4 receivers of your next 5 picks. So you have Godwin, Kupp, Allen, Fuller, and then you have Johnson in the 3rd round. So you went a little receiver heavy there. Is this a strategy of yours in drafts?
Not really. I don't go into it with anything other than, kind of do what the board is telling you to do. And this is a year where everybody's going going running back heavy. So I tend to end up just going value at receiver. Went the 4th one with Fuller, probably a reach over his ADP. But when you're in any tournament style thing, I think you want to take some upside guys. And I think Fuller's one of those guys who can drop 40 any week. So you want to be sure that you have a couple of those on your bench and on your roster.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that in this tournament style. I know you want to differentiate yourself from the rest of the league somehow. So taking a chance on Fuller is something you might not do in your standard league, but you might do here. Is that kind of how you approach it?
I think it depends on the number of teams as well. In a 10-team league, I take a stab on them all day long because you can make up for it given the deeper benches that you can get there and the more depth. If it's 14 or 16, I might be a little bit more conservative in a standard league. But here in a tournament, I think you have to throw at least a couple of darts, especially when you go conservative kind of back-to-back with Cooper Kupp and Keenan Allen. I mean, Kupp can put up big points, but Keenan Allen is really 1,000 to 1,100, 6-touchdown guy, 100 catches with a quarterback change. So you don't know where that's going to end up ultimately.
So Jordan Howard, Tevin Coleman, your next two running backs on your roster. Just give me your thoughts on those two guys this year. You hoping that one of them can, break through for you and be a dependable flex play, maybe even a number two option at some point as well? Is that what you're thinking with those two guys?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I just kept getting crushed in this draft. So I was just trying to plug holes at that point, and I figured I'd plug the hole with one guy who hopefully will be just a steady Eddie, drop you 8 to 12 in a week, and if you need to plug him in over Cook or Johnson, and hope that those two stay healthy. And then Coleman was really more of an upside throw there, saying, can we get the Tevin Coleman that we thought we were going to get last year, as an example? Maybe not at the beginning of the season, but at some point during the season through just good play or injuries. So tried to take one baseline pick and one upside throw there, kind of back to back, given what I did with receiver that you already mentioned.
All right, tight end position. You have Hunter Henry, Ian Thomas, your two guys there. Hunter Henry, expectations for him. Is this a guy you've been targeting in drafts? Somebody you're expecting to finally have that breakout year? I know a lot of people have been thinking it's going to happen the last couple of years. Hasn't happened because of injury and hasn't been able to stay on the field for the most part. But you think this is the year finally that Henry breaks through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a wait on tight end guy almost every year, and I think this is 100% the best year ever to wait on tight end. I don't think I've ever seen this kind of depth at the position. So this was much more just wait at tight end and kind of let the draft come to me and see what falls, and taking a look at the board and seeing who was going to take a tight end. So when, Henry was kind of the guy that fell to me, it's usually either him or Higbee or Hurst. I'm fine with all of those. And then Ian Thomas was really more of a, great build, really athletic, finally in a position where he's not overshadowed by Olsen. And Teddy Bridgewater can't throw the ball deep, but he can throw the ball accurately, and that bodes well for over the middle type throws, which is why I think Moore and Ian Thomas are in for big years. I usually like to take a little OJ Howard that late, just get that upside pick and, hope it pans out and Gronk gets injured like he always does. But I was just as happy with Ian Thomas there late.
Yeah, O.J. Howard's definitely been a target of mine late as well. So you said you're a wait on tight end guy. How about wait on a quarterback guy? Is that the same strategy? You end up kind of doing that here. You got Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, two veterans. Is that kind of how you approach things with that position?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I would never even take Phillip Rivers or any second quarterback, but everybody was scarfing up quarterbacks in this league for some reason. Usually in these high stake leagues, there are plenty on the waiver wire that you can kind of sub out one week and then put your guy back in there. But I am a wait on quarterback guy every year as well, unless you see someone like a Lamar fall, mid to later in the third, then you kind of have to nab them. But for me, I'm kind of indifferent between Drew Brees, Carson Wentz, Matt Stafford, and kind of that tier. So I just kind of wait, let everybody else let the draft fall to me, take as much depth as I can before I snag on QB and tight end, which is why I usually take them back to back too, by the way.
Gotcha. So the draft in general, though, were there any surprises to you? Maybe players going early, going later, anything stand out to you at all in this TFC draft that kind of maybe had you scratch your head a little bit one way or the other, either good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked that Ronald Jones went early in the 5th. I think that's a crowded backfield. Not surprising, though, given the guy that picked it. He's a lot more talk than he is actual substance. So, you'll see that from AC. And then I was shocked by my guy Purple down on the end. He just hated wide receiver this entire draft. Hated it. I think in the 8th, he realized, hold on a second, I need to take wide receiver. So bold strategy there. And then I'm always curious now to see where Lenny Fournette goes. And he went, I think, in the 8th here, which is pretty aggressive, but it's a lottery ticket, right? If you can get an RB1 that late and see if he lands somewhere, will be interesting to see how that plays out. So I think those were the big surprises. Everything else was pretty chalky.
All right. That was Ben Shiarelli. He had the 7th pick in this draft that we just previewed here, that I just I didn't preview it that I just talked about, and that was him. Thanks a lot to him for joining me. I really appreciate it, Ben. Thanks so much.
You got it, brother.
I'm joined by RJ now, who had the 5th pick in the TFC draft that I just talked about on the video, and now I get a chance to interview him. Robert, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you had a really tough decision. You had the 5th pick. So you end up going Alvin Kamara. Was it a tough one for you with the news out recently? I know it probably wasn't the easiest. A few days ago, you probably were a little easier to make that decision, but today might have been a little tougher for you. Was it a tough one?
It was yesterday when the news, dropped that, they were talking about holdout. I just thought it was probably a bunch of fluff from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that New Orleans is going to sign him. In fact, all the information that we're reading so far is that they're negotiating and they're close. So they're not gonna let him go. I mean, this Drew Brees, his window opportunity for Super Bowl is like getting that close, to being done. And so they're going to want to keep him because he's a big part of what they do in that offense.
So 2nd round pick, you went Kamara, and then you took Travis Kelce. So has Kelce been a target of yours in that 2nd round, getting the number 1 tight end?
Yes, Kelce or Kittles. I've usually been trying to target them. I like to try and dominate every position as I can when I draft. And I knew that if I didn't take them then, neither one of those two would come back to me.
Okay. So after Kelce, you went Robinson, McLaurin, Kareem Hunt, James White, Jarvis Landry, Chase Edmonds, Josh Allen, Deshaun Jackson, Jared Cook, Jerick McKinnon, 49ers defense, Paris Campbell, Greg Zuerlein, and then Michael Pittman Jr. is kind of the core of your team there. So your number 2 running back has some question marks probably with Kareem Hunt, James White, Chase Edmonds. You just hoping for one of those guys to hit each week? Is that what you're playing?
Yes.
Maybe platoon them?
The thing, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna play the matchups, and start them. In fact, I could even start them both. Put one in the flex since there's 2 flexes in this type of format. But I think in Cleveland, Kareem Hunt is going to role and probably a pretty active and strong role. And not only just that, but if something were to happen to Chubb, man, I'm sitting pretty there.
Yeah, definitely. So your receiver position, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin are your 2 top guys. I know some people think Robinson's a little undervalued. He had a big top 10 season last year. McLaurin seems set up for a breakout year. These two guys you've been looking at in drafts a lot.
I do. I look for him, especially McLaurin. He's the number 1 guy there. They're going to be playing from behind a lot. He's going to get a whole boatload of targets. So I just think he's just really going to take a big step up. And then as far as Robinson goes, he's on a team that his quarterback play hasn't been all that great, and yet he's still a top 10 wide receiver. Now, I think that if Foles wins the job, which is looking like he just might, that's going to increase his opportunities with better quarterback play. And not only that, it's going to help out the running back too, the running game.
So Josh Allen is your number 1 QB. You took him in round 9. He was the 7th quarterback off the board. Was there anybody else you're debating with that pick, or was Allen the guy the whole way at that quarterback spot for you there?
Well, I wanted to take Preston Williams, but because of the way I was doing my lineup, I had to pass on him, and I knew that AC was going to take him. He took Cooper, and I said, you know what? I bet he comes back and grabs him. I knew that was going to happen. So I waited to Josh Allen because I think that he's going to take a big step forward, and plus he's a running quarterback. So you've got that added. And then the other guy that I was debating at that same time was Matt Ryan. And I took the dual threat in Allen versus Ryan. And then I came back, got a couple of other quarterbacks that were Garoppolo, and then Minshew, who's also a running back too. So when I drafted Garoppolo, I didn't look at the bye week. They're both the same, so I had to go and get another quarterback.
I gotcha. Yeah, the quarterback position too. I like to ask everybody this: how do you approach it come in your drafts? Are you waiting a little bit? Are you trying to get one of the top guys? Allen's probably in that second tier, but normally, how do you go about getting the quarterback spot in your drafts?
Well, depends on how everything depends on the flow of the draft. I do try to get Prescott if he comes to me in the 7th round. And see, and I needed somebody else before the 7th round, and of course AC waited to that round and he took him. I knew he was. I already knew it. So I just said I'm going to let it go and just wait, a couple more rounds and grab. I do target Allen though. He's one of the guys I target because I really think that he's going to take a step forward. With the addition of Diggs, that's going to help him. I think that he's going to take a step forward. He might even take it to that next tier, the possibility.
All right, I want to ask you about some of your mid-round picks as well. You have Deshaun Jackson, Jerick McKinnon, Paris Campbell. These are all guys you're kind of, taking a stab at. See if they break through. These guys that you have some, you have some good feelings about these players.
I do. The thing is, in Philadelphia, if Deshaun Jackson can stay on the field, I think he's going to be really big. Now the other guy, the Rager got hurt. And so I think that especially early on, Deshaun Jackson's really going to be the target. And, last year when he first started out with Wentz, man, they were just doing sweet things together. But, again, he's got an issue with staying on the field. And who was the other guy you were saying?
You had Jerick McKinnon and Paris Campbell or two other guys in that mid-round.
Yeah, I think Paris Campbell is going to be running out of the slot, and Rivers likes the slot. So that wasn't really too much of a hard thing to do, to figure out to grab him later in rounds, because I think that he could be fantasy gold.
So I just want to ask you about your general advice for people doing these fantasy championship leagues. What's some things that you do in these leagues that you might not do in your standard league? Is there anything you do different in these big time contests like this?
Are you talking between standard and PPR format?
Well, just like your standard league with maybe your friends, coworkers, compared to this fantasy championship, which has, a lot of people, thousands of people in it, competing for a chance to win $300,000. Do you approach it any differently, or is it the same way you do your other jobs?
Actually, I only use your site for my fantasy football this year, except I did do a couple at a couple other different sites. I don't do any friends leagues or community leagues or anything like that. I mean, right now, I would say that your site gets 99.5% of all my attention and all my investment in something that I love doing. But there is difference in the format. You have dual flex versus single flex, and you really have to look at that. A lot of people go running back hungry because that it's a scarcity position this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, because everything's going multiple running back by committees. So there's only very few true workhorses. They're usually gone in the first round, maybe mid-second round. And then you're talking about, committees. So my advice is because there is a position scarcity and wide receivers deep. I mean, it's just really deep. Focus in on there in the first couple rounds. I mean, out of the first 3 rounds, you should at least try to come away with 2 running backs. Even though I didn't do that because I went after Kelsey, and then when it came back, I was looking at what running backs were there versus the talent in the wide receiver, and I went with Robinson.
All right, great stuff, RJ. Really appreciate you joining me. Really want to wish you a lot of luck in this league as well, and maybe we'll have to catch up again sometime soon. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.